In this tutorial, I'm going to show you how to set up your Windows IIS Internet Information Server on your Windows PC. I'm running Windows 8.1 here, and I'm just going to show you how to do the basic functions and how to enable that and how to allow it through your firewall. So there's a couple of things we're going to need to look at here. We're going to need to configure our firewall. We're going to actually need to give access to the IIS server because by default it's not enabled. It should be on your computer, but it is not enabled, so you won't have access to it until you enable it. And we're going to need to set some inbound and outbound rules, and we're also going to need to open a port up on our router. A couple of things you might want to keep in mind is your port number, what you're going to use, what your ISP will allow. A lot of ports are blocked just because they don't want you to run a spam server, or they don't want you to run a main server on port 21. I know my ISP blocks me from using port 21. Also, you're going to want to look at your IP address, whether or not it's going to be a static IP or if it's going to be changing. I know mine changes about every 3 months, and since it changes about every 3 months, I can usually catch it when it changes, and I don't really have to worry about getting a static IP. But if you have an IP address that changes every day or every couple of days, you may want to think about doing a static IP address. They're really not too expensive. A lot of the internet service providers don't charge very much at all to have a static IP. So anyways, first off, we need to actually enable the Windows IIS server. So I'm just going to do it on Windows 8 here. I'm going to type in programs. So I can come over here and I'm going to say programs and features. You can find that in your control panel on Windows 7. And so I'm going to go to turn Windows features on or off. Again, that can be also found in control panel under programs and features in Windows 7, or you can go through control panel on Windows 8. So you're going to want to turn these off, on and off. So it'll open this big list. And right here where it says Internet Information Services, you can see mine's already checked because I've already allowed it on here. So I went ahead and allowed all of this because I just wanted everything. I wanted to be able to run an FTP server, and I wanted all the tools, and I wanted all the good stuff that comes along with it. So you're just going to check that, and you'll click OK, and it'll take it a second, and it'll run through the process of allowing it through. All right, now there, IIS has been enabled on this computer, and it will be enabled on your computer as well if you do this that way. So now you're ready to actually set up a website. So I will just give you the quick rundown on the IIS server. So you can just go over here and you're going to type in IIS, and it's Internet Information Services Manager. So you'll click it, and it's going to open you up to this screen here. And within this screen you have like all these options. You have FTP firewall. I mean, you got all these things. This looks overwhelming. Don't worry about this just yet. You don't really need to worry. So you're going to come down here. This is just the name of my computer, and you're going to click Sites. You can see I already have several of them running on this computer. Now, this Narvin site here, this is my home automation that I've been diving into using some different microcontrollers and stuff. And I'll just go to that website real quick, and I'll show you what it looks like. It's pretty plain, simple. And if I click one of these buttons, it'll turn the lights on or off, like outside in my room, open a couple of garage doors up, however I want to work it. And this, you can see, changed from being projectnarvin.com to being the IP address. And in a couple of months, this IP address will change again. I have that domain through GoDaddy, and then I just forward all the traffic that hits that domain to my IIS server, which is running on this PC. And in return, that is the IP address that it runs to. So that's just kind of what it will let you do. You can do HTML. You can do your ASPX websites. They don't really limit you. I've had a problem running PHP, so that's just kind of something to keep in mind. It doesn't seem to like that. I didn't think it would, and it just doesn't. So I have my router already pulled up, but I'll go ahead and close that and show you in just a second. So anyways, in order to add a new site, you just go over here to Site, right-click it, and you'd say Add Website or Add FTP Site. You're going to give it a name, so you could say, test site. And then you're going to give it a physical path where the website is actually stored on your hard drive. So it goes by a normal server, and what I mean by that is your default page is either going to be called default or index. And so you'll just find wherever that folder is located. So it could be located on your C drive. So like you could say C drive and then My Documents, whatever. And it'll lead you to the actual folder where all your website is located. And that's the only folder that your website will have access to. So you won't be able to backtrack and go to the root of your C drive or anything like that. That way, so people who are viewing your website, they will only have access to that one folder and the folders within that folder. So if you say it's declared on your, drive G, then it will have access to the entire drive G, even other folders that have nothing to do with the website. So that's why it's good to narrow it down, kind of put everything inside of a folder. So you can just go ahead and do that. You want to say HTTP if you have the security or the encryption, you can go ahead and do that. Give it an IP address, so your IP address right here. This computer is this one, but that would mean that only this computer could access it, so you're just going to say all unsigned, and you're going to need to give it a port. So most of the time, your ISP will block port 21, port 80, port 8080, all those common ones. So you kind of want to give it something. So you could say, port 2563, and by, a long shot, by any means, that port will probably be open and your ISP will allow you through. Now, another thing is a lot of ISPs don't want you to run a server unless you have a business line or, you have a static IP. So you want to keep the internet traffic to a minimum. Don't really use it to, host lots of gaming websites or anything like that. You just want to kind of use it for personal use, maybe even to have access to your files when you're away from home. So you kind of want to keep that in mind. If you do want to host your main server, for some reason you want to put it on, your little computer with 4 gigabytes of RAM, you can do it, but, your internet service provider might be a little picky on it. And then your host name, don't really worry about that. So this is just kind of how to set up a website. Once you have it set up, it'll just appear on the side, and it will start working immediately, and you'll be able to access it through any internet browser. So that is how you activate your IIS. Now, if you just did this step and you go to another computer, even on your network, it's not going to be able to access this website because we have no port forwarding through the router and we have no access through the firewall. So this computer would be the only computer that's able to access that website that you just, declared on your IIS server. So in order for traffic outside of your own computer that the IIS server is on to access it, even your iPhone, even devices on your same network, like your Android, iPhone, or even your other PCs, you're going to need to enable your firewall, and you're also going to need to give it a port through your router. So I'm just going to kind of close out of that for a second. And once again, I'm just going to search in here, and I'm just going to say firewall. And it's going to pull up Windows Firewall. You're going to want to select this. And then you're going to come over here, and you're going to say Advanced Settings. Again, this is all in Control Panel under Windows Firewall. And so it will work on a Windows 7 as well. So Advanced Settings. And here you can set your inbound and outbound rules. And this is what we're going to need to do. So if you go to inbound rules, you'll see I have all these inbound rules allowed here. And I have something. I named it. I cannot remember what I named it. But I named it something special so that I would remember it. I'm not entirely sure. Anyways, you're just going to say new rule. And you're just going to say a port. You're going to say next. Okay, and you're going to say your port number. So if you want to do port, 550 or whatever, if I can type 550, then that'd be good. But if you don't want to just give it access to just one port, maybe you're going to host several different websites. You can't say a website A has this port and then website B has the same port as Windows A. Then it's just going to get really confusing, and it's not going to be able to decipher, and it's not going to let you do it too. A real cheap, easy way to do it is just say all local ports, and then you say next and finish, and it's going to give any inbound traffic it's going to send to this computer, or it's going to allow to this computer once it gets past your router. So if you do all local ports, just beware you have access to everything. That's what I did. It's not posed a problem yet, so I wouldn't really worry about it. But you would just click next, and then you would say allow the connections, click next, and then when does it apply, all the time, and then you would just give it a name. And I cannot remember what I named mine, but you can just name it, my home server, my server on my PC, whatever you want to name it. Give it a little description. That way you can find it in later events, which I did not do. And you're also going to want to do that for outbound rules as well. That way your server can send information back to the client, and they can just communicate back and forth, allow real easy access. You don't have to do it outbound, and you don't have to do it inbound, but, if you want to have that peer-to-peer communication from client to server, then you're going to need to do that. So that is a way to get it through your Windows firewall on the actual computer. So now your computers on your network will be able to access the server here, as well as client computers and phones and such outside of your network. But there's one more step that we need to do here. I'm going to go ahead and close it out. We need to actually go to our router. So I'm just going to log into my router real quick. Okay. And once you're inside the router, you're actually going to need to set some port forwarding. So I'm using an ASUS router, so mine's probably going to look a little different than a lot of other routers do. I know that was kind of a shock for me to have this kind of layout when I switched over from running like Belkin and running Linsky's and stuff to actually, Netgear and all that, from all those to an ASUS router is kind of a different one. My firewall is a little different. I have an actual firewall on my router that is being used, and so I had to kind of configure that differently. Most routers really don't do that. They don't really worry about it. So don't really worry about my firewall on my router. You're just going to want to go to your WAN. It's fun to say. And mine is located under virtual server port forwarding, and that's where my port forwarding is actually located. And so you can see I have all these things being forwarded. Like here's stuff from my cameras, and then I have each one of my website has a separate port being forwarded. So you would just go ahead and add, give it a name. You'd add its port. So if you decided to do port 2563, that's where you would input 2563. And then your local IP would be the IP address of the computer that you have the Windows Server installed on. If you don't know how to find your IP address of the computer that you just activated the IIS server on, an easy way to do that is run over to command prompt real quick, open it up, and then type in ipconfig. And it's going to go ahead and it's going to give you your IP address along with your default gateway, your subnet, and your subnet mask. So you can see that my IP address is right here, 192.168.1.144, and you can see that these are forwarded to that. So you can see I have a couple of them being forwarded. Once you add that in, you can add it for just TCP or UDP. It kind of depends on what you're doing. I just always said both because I never know if I'm going to change it, and I don't always have to want to go back to my router and reconfigure stuff. So I just said allow both. I added it, and then I applied it to my router. My router rebooted, and we set up, and now I have access to these websites on an external network. Now, you can decline access so that only computers on your network have access to it, and you would do that within the firewall. And you can you can decline access to anything on your network, so only computers outside of your network could have access to it. And you would actually do that through your IIS server as well, or your firewall. So once you go back to IIS server, you can select your websites that you have, and if I don't want to allow access to this particular website, you can do that like through your users, through the IP address log. Let's see, request filtering. You can filter the requests from it, I believe. Let's see. So I can not allow certain extensions. I can not allow certain URLs. So if someone enters a private URL, like let's say I have a special downloads folder for me to access only on my laptop, I can decline access to it to anybody else, but the IP address of my laptop, whatever the case may be. There's a ton of different uses. And if you want to add an FTP website, you can do that as well. So you can just do your add FTP website, and this will give you access to, allow your file transfer protocol, and you can use, things like FileZilla and stuff. You can still use FileZilla to transfer stuff over to your server from a remote computer and all that. You can do everything like normal. This will run as a normal server. It won't run as a Linux, obviously. It'll run as a Windows server, so you kind of keep that in mind. But it will allow you to do everything that you can do on a regular Windows server, but also be using it as a PC, which is really nice, and it's really cheap, easy way to get away with it. Instead of having to buy, a $5,000 server, you can use, your couple $100 PC as a small server to get started, maybe for a small business or just personal, private, fun use, whatever it might be. So this is just a simple way to allow your computer to use Internet Information Services Manager and how to actually set it up and get it started. I know whenever I was trying to figure this out, it took me several times because the firewall is tricky, and so is the port forwarding. You just really got to make sure that all your numbers match, and you have to remember to allow it to allow the traffic through on your firewall. On my other computer that I have, I tried to set IIS server up, and I ended up having to allow the firewall access through all ports. I'm not entirely sure why, but like on this computer, this one only has access to a certain range of ports. My other one has it through all ports, and it just worked better that way, and so I went, did it that way. And so the other What's really nice though is you can always delete things, delete permissions, only allow certain users. Like you can have it to where you have to log in. I know on my FTP server you have to log in, and you actually log in with the credentials on the computer. So if my login would be, my PC at home for the username, and then the password was, password123, then that's what you would actually log in with on like FileZilla or whatever you would use to transfer your files back and forth from another remote PC to the server. Now you can create several different accounts. So you could have 5 accounts, and each account has certain access to a file on the server computer, or it has access to a certain group of files or folders, and that's nice as well. Now if you have an FTP site, you can do virtual binding, so that way you can have several hard drives connected to the FTP server instead of just one, and that's also a real handy thing to do. It just, this can be used for so many different things. You can allow access, while you're away from home. Maybe you just do this while you're traveling. That way you have access to all your files. When you're, on the go, you just log into your computer from somewhere else. So now, another cool feature is once you have your server all connected, you can actually give it, give your File Explorer here, you can actually give it a spot here. So you can come down, you can see where I have my main servers, located right here, so I can access them on this computer. You can just do add new network location, and you're just going to specify, so I can say FTP, like that, and you can log on, I'm not going to log on anonymously because I have a username and password, so my username would be like maybe Eli. I'll give it that name, sure, and then open the network when I'm finished. Is it going to open? Oh, I did not type that in right. I'm going to have to let it load now. That was my old IP address. So you can see where that would get a little hectic having to manage the different IPs. So I'll just try it again. I'll add the correct IP address in here. And we're not responding. There we go. Add network location, next. FTP. There we go. I don't want to log on anonymously. You can set it where you can log on anonymously, but then anyone else has access to it, so I'm kind of skeptical of doing that. I don't really want everyone to have access to my stuff. So here we go. Alright, so now it's going to prompt you to put in your password, so I'll just put in my password here. And I'm just going to say save password. And then here we go. Here's all the files that are located on my FTP server. So I can transfer stuff here, I can copy stuff. So like if I wanted to copy this right here, and I just want to paste it to my desktop, it's actually going to download from the other server. So you'll see where it's going to copy. It's going to take it just a split second longer, because it is having to do an FTP authorization to download it. This is an easy way to do it, to connect your computers together once you have the FTP server, or, you have your server set up on your PC side. And then you can, well, we're still not responding. I know my video recording program here is taking quite a bit of the memory, and my OneDrive is syncing as well, so that could make this not want to work very well for me. Anyways, you still have access to it all, and you can see what what it will actually do. We'll just download the folder file, and just like you would normally when you're moving items back and forth from your desktop to a hard drive, or from your thumb drive to your hard drive, except now it's going to actually have to download it. It also could be because that other computer could be doing something else or something. Who knows? This is the computer world for you. But anyways, that's just a simple tutorial on how to get away with setting up the IIS server on your Windows computer simply and painlessly and as easily as possible.